Good afternoon, Albania. We are a couple minutes away from the start of this next webinar, just really excited to again collaborate with EU for Innovation. And today's topic is going to be on emergency response. And so for me personally, it's both a challenging topic, but also it's a completely liberating topic. And so, yeah, really looking forward to this. You guys can't see it, but I am wearing my absolute favorite spring t-shirt right now. So I came prepared. So
yeah, and this presentation is actually really dear to my heart because this is what Keith helped me do to save my business 3 years ago. So it's a hard process, but it's really, really impactful. It works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be great to have this. I think it's going to be great to have this session because we have this opportunity to talk through some tough issues together, and also talk about opportunities. So as you guys are coming online, just a quick reminder, just introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are. What would be great is that as you guys are introducing yourselves, if you can let us know what kind of business you're running. Whether that is restaurant or an e-commerce platform or blockchain, doesn't matter what it is, but do just let us know. And I would be also curious if you are pre or post launch. So those would be kind of the questions that I would ask, and we'll ask those questions once again when we get things started in this. So it's 1 minute before the top of the hour, at least here in Vancouver. And so I'm going to suggest that we probably start, close to, 3 or 5 minutes after the hour, just to make sure everybody has a chance to come online.
Mm-hmm. We're learning all the features of Crowdcast through doing these webinars. It's good.
I know. Yeah, it's amazing all the different platforms that we're all learning how to use in this online world. And so it's always good to share them. For anybody who's online who is looking at doing large webinars, Crowdcast so far has been very good for us. We've been able to run it in multiple countries and be successful with it. So far so good.
Yeah, and we haven't been Zoom bombed at Spring yet, right?
Yeah, thankfully our particular Zoom sessions have not been Zoom bombed. I was a participant in one, which was really funny.
Yeah.
And so thankfully there was a backup Zoom link, and so we were the organizer of the webinar was able to get everybody back on very quickly. So yeah, I think Zoom has made some changes to security, which helps as well.
Good. Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome, Americans. Anita, great to have you both here. Looking forward to the session. I have had 2 cups of caffeine so far this morning, so I think I can make it through. Well done, Americans. Yeah, here in Vancouver, it is supposed to start raining this afternoon, and then it is supposed to rain for a week. And so not only are we locked in, but I think we're going to be stuck in because of the rain in the coming
We've
week.
been spoiled. We've almost lost our Vancouver edge of being able to handle the rain.
I know, right?
The sun.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have some people joining us, which is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's great to hear. You know, this time of year, you know, a year ago at this time, I was in Tirana. And I was there with Erkins and with some of the other people. And in the ecosystem. And I got to tell you, the weather a year ago was fantastic in Albania. We had just it was so lovely. So, yeah. So it's good. I'm excited to hear that the weather is so nice. So, yeah. Yeah, Tirana is one of my favorite cities. The food is incredible. You know, the parks and the cycling paths, and it's it's a really, really nice part of the world. Yeah, Toronto is pretty good too. Yeah, Toronto is pretty good too. Yeah.
NBA champs.
Yeah.
So true.
So true. Yeah. Yeah, Toronto is an amazing city because of how multicultural it is, and how the different neighborhoods based on different backgrounds is just such a really, really nice thing. So, yeah, Anita, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I think Erkin's the hockey team comment is a bit open to debate these days, but hey, we can save that for another time, to be sure. So what we're going to do, everybody, is we're going to get started in 1 minute. And so what we'd love to do is we would love to have you introduce yourself in chat. And so what we're looking for here is just say, hi, my name is, what company you're with, what you do. So is it like e-commerce? Is it retail? So tell us what it is that you do. And I'd also love to know if you're pre-launch or post-launch, because that will have an impact on some of what we shared today. So please do introduce yourself in chat, and then we'll go from there. So
yeah, so the chat is for chat, and then if you have a direct question as we're talking, just remember on the bottom there it says ask a question, and that's where we go to throughout the session. We try to kind of interweave them as much as possible, and we want to get as many answered as we can.
Yeah. Hey, and I'm just making a note here. Hey, Jerry. Incubator Accelerator. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, great to have you here. Obviously, based on what we do with Spring, we're in the same world as you. And maybe what I'll do is I'll actually use this opportunity to formally kick off this session. So hi, everyone. My name is Keith, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Spring. And Spring is a Vancouver-based organization that changes the world through entrepreneurship. And the way that we like to do that is through a couple of things. We like to do incubation, acceleration, so supporting entrepreneurs pre-launch to get to launch. And then acceleration program is about post-launch and then helping you start to grow, right? Like that's our acceleration side of things. We also do a lot of work helping entrepreneurs to raise money. And we also do investor training for people who want to make their first early stage investments. So that's something we definitely love to do as well. And we are really excited to partner today on this business resiliency series. And today is the second one in the series. And I'm actually going to take a moment now to share my screen and just kick off this process. So here we are, and I'm just going to kick this into presentation mode. And for this series, what I want to do first and foremost is I want to kick things off by just thanking you for innovation for making this webinar happen. Really excited to collaborate with EU for Innovation and the support that they're giving to entrepreneurs in Albania. And so thank you to that great team. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to kick over to the next slide, which is the agenda. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over this next couple of sections to Jamie. She's going to lead things off. And then just to give you a little bit of context for who I am, I am a serial entrepreneur. Spring is actually my fourth venture. This is my third recession as the leader of a business. And so I've definitely had more than enough experience than I'd like to really share around working through recessions. I've definitely had to make tough decisions. And I've also had to move in emergency response, which is this topic that we are facing today. And so what I'm excited about is just sharing this with you. And so, Jamie, I'll hand it over to you. And just as a passing comment for everyone, I will be tracking the questions. Don't forget to introduce yourself into the chat and put your questions by clicking that Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen. So Jamie, over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, so my name is Jamie, and I ran, for 5 years, I've been running a business called Thrive Art Studio. And it was about 4 years ago I met Keith and started working with Spring on their Grow program. And that helped my business so much. And then a year later was when we hit some financial trouble ourselves. So we were in that growth stage and we just had cash flow problems. And so this process, why I'm so excited to be leading it today, is the process that I went through. And it's a hard one, but it actually led to our most profitable year. We doubled the business and then it was just up from there. So it wasn't during a recession, but the tactic is the same. So yeah, I'm really excited to share. Last week, we went through, looking at your business in these chunks. And the first one we wanted to talk about was getting your finances in order. So this is sort of the process that we suggest you do. And the sooner you can do it, the better. So yeah, Keith, anything else to add before we dive in?
Oh, that's fantastic. I will move the slides forward.
Awesome. So a big thing with this is there's a couple things, which is it's so important to do this sooner than later. One thing that I found in this process, I felt pretty embarrassed going through my cash flow in this way, and I felt like I had let people down and it was my fault. And right now it's a time where a lot of businesses are going through this. So I hope you don't feel that way, because it's not your fault and you can do this. So just remember to breathe. Remember that you can't follow these steps and get through it. Excuse me. So, but the important thing is to act now. So when we go through emergency response, we really want to think about what can we cut. So is there rent, payroll, contractors? We're going to go through a list of kind of how to go through this. But a big one we wanted to recognize was that software and systems. So I think we're at a funny time where everyone wants us to automate to grow. And there's really great things with automation, but there's this real energy around systems and software. And they're great. But what I found in my situation is that we had over-systematized in a way that we were paying for a lot of different software to do a lot of different things. And some of it was super necessary, but the great thing is that this is actually a time where you get to look at it and say, how necessary is this? So saving money is always good, and this is an opportunity to really look at what you've created. So we're going to create a calendar and to check contracts, and we're going to go through that. But the biggest thing to note here is that during this process, it's really a mindset shift. So we want to remember that $1 that you save, so an expense that you cut, actually is dollars into your business. Whereas if you earn that money, you earn $1, you are not taking that full dollar home because you have to pay expenses. So it's not one for one. Whereas cutting expenses and really streamlining is the biggest way to make an impact very quickly to save your business. So it's super, super important. Anything to add to that, Keith?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. For those who were on the first session last week, this is what we shared last week. It was just like a high level kind of introduction of what we talked about. And it is that bottom line comment about like $1 saved is $1 profit, or $1 saved is $1 less in loss. And so what we're excited about today is we're actually going to work through some like real working examples of how you can dig into these different components. And then from there, hopefully answer the questions that you guys have about what you can do in your particular business. So goal here is to be very workshop focused and answer the questions you guys have, and make sure that we can cover off the issues and the challenges that you're facing.
We would love for you guys to leave this session and do this very quickly, because it will make a difference. So for me at this time, I had to really, when I was going through this process, like really understand that cutting your expenses is the same as earning money. So we were so revenue focused. We needed more money in the business, and that was that sort of growth mindset. We needed to bring it in. Well, there's also some real, like, it's the same as then taking a deep dive into what you have set up and cutting away the fat, basically. So we had a lot of things going that really looked nice, but maybe weren't actually key components to getting what we made to our people. And that's what we want to think about. Those are the important things we want to keep in the business, and everything else probably can go at this point. So yeah, we're going to go to the next slide. Keith? He's my slide master. So step 1 is looking at your money. And so this is really important, is not to look at your projected money or your plan you had for 2020 or the idea of the money you think you will have. This is your actual money. So you want to start by just writing down the amount of cash you have in the bank. And then you want to minus anything you owe at that moment in time. So anything that you need, that there's a bill in the door, a Visa bill, that is money owed, like the service has already been done. So not future expenses. This is actually what you owe at the moment. And that is the money you have right now. So any idea of the money you thought you would have or the projections, like I said, we want to just focus on that number. So you want to have that written down. It's the first step. So these steps, again, like I said, I found that embarrassing, that nervousness, but this is what is going to get you so clear. So just keep going, because once you have these numbers, it's amazing the timeline you can create. It's amazing then you can put on the entrepreneurial hat and keep going. So now you want to add to you have your number of the actual money you have, and you want to look forward on your calendar and what are the upcoming one-off expenses. So you have you booked in a new product photo shoot and you have that coming up. You want to put that in. Plus you want to look at all your monthly expenses. The biggest thing here is to make a big list of these. Every single dollar that's going out the door, to the cent. And I say that because we often will say, oh, I need that, or that $5 subscription or $10 subscription doesn't really matter. It's something I need. It's really important to see the list, because it is shocking how quickly it starts to add up. So the next, you have now your number, you have your expenses listed, and now the big cut. You want to go through your monthly expenses and your one-off, to be honest, if you think life is changing here with those plans. And you want to cut as many expenses as you can. So I talked about this last time. It's like my sob story, but I still remember in this process, we had a Spotify subscription, and I think it was $10 US. So in Canadian, that's still, close to $13, $14. And having this list, I thought, I want this, and this makes me sad that I can't even, as a small business, afford a Spotify playlist. But we cut it, and we cut a lot of other things, and it's so amazing how it begins to add up, and you really start to see, I can have this money back, and I can actually invest it in my business to grow it. So these expenses, when they leave you, they're out the door. They go to someone else's business. So you want to keep as much as you can in your hand. Cash right now is really, really, really important. Anything to add to that, Keith?
Yeah, so I do think that from my perspective, that what I found is that sometimes cutting small expenses, like an extra user in Google accounts, or you gave an example of Spotify, which I think was a really good example. Sometimes cutting the small ones are both hard, but they're actually a good way to get started because they are smaller. And so I think it's really important to start to ask ourselves the question of, what are these expenses that we can start to cut now to make sure that we are, really staying focused on extending our runway, right? Like extending that amount of time. And I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. And so, Jerry, talking about running an incubator and accelerator for startups, I think as you are talking to your startups, one of the really critical pieces is to really reinforce with them that this is good, like it's healthy, it's okay to do this, but making sure that they do it sooner rather than later, because sometimes people, and we're all in this together, right? And so sometimes we as people, we say, oh, the lockdown is not going to last too long, and so I'll just hang on to this stuff because I might need it later. And so that's a very false sense of hope. And so what we want to do is we want to actually say, no, I'll cut what I don't need now. And if things rebound quickly, well, great, then I can start to buy them again, or I can subscribe again, or whatever the case may be. So I think that's really the critical piece.
Well, and to add to that, I think that's so important to note here is that we're in a situation that probably, if you had been told back in time, if someone had said to you, oh, your entire team's going to work remotely and you're going to be stuck at home, you'd think, oh, that wouldn't work for my business. That, I can't imagine that. And so we're at a time where there's some things that we just can't imagine. So if you bring in that mindset to cutting expenses, it might feel we have to have that. Really dig into why you have to have it. Because for me, this time in my business was the most important time for me as an entrepreneur, but also for the business. We got way stronger because we became way leaner and way more focused on what we needed to do because we cut away all the noise. Mm-hmm. So just really use that mindset there as a shift of, this is exciting because we as entrepreneurs, we've been told to grow and we've been told to do all these certain things that right now you're in survive mode. So, put on that gritty, how you started, you bootstrapped probably to make this business. So that's what we want to go back to.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well said. Yeah. Great.
Awesome. So the biggest thing with cutting expenses, and especially when we're talking about anything that's systems. So I'll give you an example. We had this automated email system that we were paying for, and it was useful, but for the survival of the business, me and my co-founder talked about it, and we both said we were willing to cut and paste emails each week. And that, for a mindset as a team, that's not definitely like a growth mindset, but that for us was survival. So we wanted to cut as many subscriptions as we could. So we cut that one. But the key thing is you need to make a list of what you're cutting to make sure those jobs are still done, to see if those jobs do those jobs still need to be done? Because we were actually sending some emails that were just nice to send because we had the subscription. So then we got super lean on what has to be done to provide our quality to our customers. And we made a list of any workflows that were now added because automation was gone. And the key thing for me, at the time, it was me and my co-founder, but actually she wasn't my co-founder yet. So because of this situation, we became a team. So there's some interesting things that can happen here. And so it's so important to bring in your team on this, because they really need to buy in the understanding of maybe why they have more work right now. So her and I together said, this makes sense for the business. We can send some extra emails every week. And that made a lot of sense. So make sure that you're keeping track when you're cutting expenses. What does that mean for the business, and who is in charge of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything there, Keith?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because you were just talking about like working with the team, right? And the team is one part of our community. And so, Anita, knowing that you're working on community investment initiatives and community interface with your current consulting engagement, this is an example of where you can actually take this one step farther externally into the community and talk to them about, what is working and what is not working for them and their businesses at this time. Because, as a natural gas pipeline, you're a partner to the community, right? And so finding out how they're doing and finding out how you as a partner could, support them as they adapt into this brave new world of kind of like COVID-19, post-COVID-19 recession, and then what you will be doing in support just as a business in the community, I think is a really important way to get the dialogue going as well. So I just want to highlight that.
Yeah. And the thing here too is so number 2 is cancel subscriptions, call vendors, and make sure to check legal agreements. A big thing here is you want to make sure, again, we've always said in the last session, is we're looking at data, we're looking at true numbers. So make sure that these subscriptions, they aren't just you and your team brainstorming about what you think is coming out of the account. This is really going to your bank account or your Visa bill and looking exactly what is being taken out to the dollar. And then the big thing here is to act quickly. So just to give you an example, this was a very hard and very long, but it was one day that I did this with my business at the time. And it was from the morning, looking at the bank statement and looking through everything that was coming out, making these choices very quickly and canceling. So we had, I had some hard phone calls. We had signed into a contract to do videos that we couldn't afford. And I had to call and talk about canceling, and it feels really bad, but it also, we didn't need those videos. We were on a different path now because of this day. So make sure you're checking legal agreements and make sure that you're really looking at how canceling affects, which is going to lead to the third step, which I think is also very, very important, is creating a calendar of reminders for canceling upcoming expenses. So you might know, I'm saying this is a day-long process, but let's just say something like the email example that I said. So you now know that you're not going to send these automated emails. Well, you still need to copy and paste those all out, set up templates in your regular email, and when you have your calendar, you can say, oh, we're paying for that for the next 2 weeks, regardless of when we cancel. So all these subscriptions, you cancel, but then they're on a day that they're done. So in your calendar, that actually now gives you some timeline points for your team. So this new workflow has to be created by this time, and everyone should know this calendar and why, and really buy into it. So it's really important to stay organized with this so that you get the most out of things and can transition as easy as possible. Keith, anything on there?
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. And it also, I think for me, it was very clearing. Once I got into it and once I let go of not listening to music on Spotify, I could use the free account. It was really nice to just, I don't know, it was something about streamlining that made this time, because then we had, there's more to come of the work of it, of getting the business on its feet. And this was a really good process of streamlining that. So you've done this really hard work and it's going to be really exhausting. So you want to now look at, so you have your numbers. So it's the money you have. So remember, that's the money in the bank minus the money you owe. That's definitely out the door. And you want to divide it by your new monthly expenses. So your new number that you're going to owe every month. And it's after you've now done all your cutting, you have your calendar, and now you have your runway. So the runway we've talked about in the past, and we kind of touched on it last time, was just to know your runway. The neat thing is, if you look at what your old expenses were, you might see your runway was 4 months. And then now that you've cut your expenses, it's nice to see maybe you've added 6 months, and it really makes a huge difference. So how many months can you survive right now is that runway number, now that you have your new expenses organized. That cover it all? The runway is the key number we want to know.
Yeah, and I think, there's a couple of things that I am going to touch on here from my perspective. Runway is the term. I'm going to use an example. Sorry, I should take a step back. There are moments in time that I believe are critical moments as an entrepreneur. And so the way that I like to describe it is that there are some things that we never want to forget as a part of these critical moments. And so I often say to people that one of the last things that you look at before you go to bed, and one of the first things that you do when you wake up in the morning, is look at your bathroom mirror. And so one of the things that I really encourage people is, whether it's with a whiteboard marker or with a tube of lipstick or anything that you can write on a whiteboard, like on a mirror, and be able to wipe it off again, is to actually put know your runway or know my runway, right? And to know exactly how much time you have in cash so that you can plan accordingly. And I think that that's really, really important through this. So maybe what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to move ahead once. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pause here for a minute. Sorry. And I just want to see if anybody has any questions just about the calculation of your runway. It's kind of, it's not rocket science. It is a technical thing. And I just want to make sure that if this is confusing at all, that we can address it right now. It's okay if there are no questions, but I just wanted to check. So I'll just pause for a moment and see if anybody has any questions on this. And if not, we'll move on.
Well, and one thing to add to this is this process. I think why it's so important is you might be listening to this and think, yeah, I know my runway. I know my expenses. This is quite, this is how I run my business. And that's awesome. For me, this process, there's a lot we're doing as entrepreneurs, and I was focused other places. And this process brought me back to the numbers. And just like Keith is saying, to have that number on your mirror, from this day on in my business, I knew my runway regardless of the cash, regardless if I was running out of cash or not. So whether it was emergency time or just a great time in the business, these numbers became how I existed, and any new expense being brought into the business was taken with a seriousness of how painful this day was. So it's really important to look at this all as opportunity to get stronger as an entrepreneur and make a better, more healthy business. And it works. So yeah, I think it's just important to go through the process, and good on you. If this is what you do weekly with your team, oh my gosh, you're amazing.
Yeah, it's such a really critical example. Now on this next point, you've gone through this process. If I just back up for a minute, so what you've done is you said, okay, how much cash do I have in the bank? And is there anything that I owe today? So therefore I have my money right now. And then I look at what I can cut. I then look at additional cutting, like canceling subscriptions and other components. And then what I do is I come up with my runway number. So this is your plan, right? So you've been building out this plan. and you've been cutting expenses, and now really is the time to go back to excuse me, what we were talking about in the first session, which was asking for help. And that is, this is a great time for you to go to your friends who are also entrepreneurs. It's your opportunity to go to your incubator and accelerator like Jerry. If you're a part of an innovation hub like the one that Arlene is running, or Sunila is running, this is your opportunity to say, here's my runway, here's the expenses I'm cutting. Can you tell me what I'm missing? What have I forgotten? What else should I be thinking about? Because sometimes we as entrepreneurs, we get into this tunnel vision of, there's like 3 things I can cut, but then we sometimes get into this place where we're like, oh, I can't cut that thing because I must have it or I need it. But sometimes when we share that and with someone else, they can give us a fresh perspective to say, actually, do you really need that? Or, is there another way to do that? And I think that that's a really important component. So to give you some context, about a month ago, I was speaking with someone and they were in the process of actually implementing a new piece of technology. And they had done an assessment of different platforms that were available, and they had different prices and different features, and they landed on a more expensive version. And so they said, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? And I said, do you really need all of those features? And what actually happened through that discussion was, it wasn't that they needed those features, it's that they wanted those features. And so we actually took them back to a place where they would actually just spend based on what they needed in this crisis as opposed to what they wanted. It ended up saving them, just to give you some context, about 75% of their budget for that. So it was, 1/4 is what they actually spent versus what they were going to spend, but it was because they asked someone else to give them feedback. So I think that's really critical. So maybe Jamie, if you want to give a comment on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's really important that, and this, I think it's, whether it's team and start with your team and then go on the outside as well, is just so important, because we as entrepreneurs have a vision, and sometimes we have a way that we believe this vision should be executed. And when you kind of go back to the why you started your business, the impact you're trying to make with it, you actually realize that maybe 5 subscriptions to automate a few things, it's nice to have, but it's not going to actually, it doesn't matter in the why goals. So it's really important to have to articulate and kind of defend what you're keeping and what you're going to really get you clear.
Yeah, well said. And one thing that I'd love to do, and we will continue on in this presentation and in this discussion, but one thing that I'd love to hear from Jerry, if Jerry, you're up for it, is to share with us as an incubator accelerator how you get your companies to share, like whether it is sharing with you as the incubator accelerator or sharing with the other companies that are in their group. But it would be nice to hear those examples. And one thing that we do as Spring is that in our programs, we have weekly roundtables, or sometimes we call them weekly week aheads, with the participants in a program. And so there's just a set time where everybody in the program come together and they actually talk about like what's working, what's not working. And it's a place to do sharing like what we're describing. Now, interestingly enough, and for Anita, I think there's a question for you, and in the role that Nordstream is playing, but is there an opportunity potentially to start to get some of the business owners and some of the entrepreneurs in some of the communities that you're working in, and maybe as a service, is to say, hey, come together and share, what's working, what's not working, what are your asks? Tell us what you're doing, like growing revenue, cutting expenses, but getting people to start to open up a little bit, but showing that value. So would love to hear from both of you about some of the things that you're thinking about as we go through. So
yeah, and I think sometimes.
But as we're waiting for comments and questions, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay.
Jamie, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think that something when we
froze. Either Jamie froze or I froze.
I think you froze. Oh, yeah. One thing to Keith's point is that sometimes we think about asking for help as asking an expert or trying to find someone to give you this expert advice, and that's really good. But why incubators and these sort of programs are so important is that it's also a fellow entrepreneur is an amazing asset and resource in that to go through the process. So Jerry says, we have communication channels both on as group, but as well one-on-one using WhatsApp, Skype, and Zoom. We reach out to them to say, how are you dealing with stress? We care for them as individuals first. Yeah, so important right now because, yeah, that's what this is. Business, is so important and wonderful, but it's also just a really hard time right now. So important to reach out to them as humans. So Keith is there. Let's see if he can come back on. Okay, he says he's coming back on. And yeah, perfect. Okay. And then another, the next kind of part of the presentation that we're going to talk through is around kind of focusing on where you want to go next. And the important part of asking for help at the end of this process is then creating a way that people can help you reach the next level of your business, which is a really cool thing. So I am going to bring up the presentation on my screen. Ooh. So that, okay, I'm new at finding this. I'm going to do this here. Yeah, and then I have the power. Oh. Okay. Oh, this is good. This is good. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Will you tell me in the chat? Yes, okay, great, cool. Great, ask for help. So we've covered that. So payroll. So this is a really tough one. And it is, oh, Keith's back. Keith, are you back?
I am here.
Okay, can you share your screen? Because I'm doing it wrong.
Oh, okay, sure, happy to do that.
Yeah, I'm not as good as
I don't know how I dropped on, but I am back and excited to be here.
Yeah, so we're on the payroll.
Right.
Yeah, the next one, payroll. So with payroll, this is really tough because it's a huge expense and it also means people. So people in our business that we really care about. And it's often a big, big cost for startups, regardless of a crisis mode. So this seems a good place to cut. But what we want to be really careful here is that people are really important and people are what are going to move our business forward. And if we can, we want to really try to cut other expenses before we're going into payroll. And it could be maybe finding solutions that make sense for your people, maybe cutting down hours, but looking at who are your most important people. And now that you kind of have cut your expenses down, you're going to see that there's going to be new workflows and new things that you need done. So trying to keep your people is a really, really important part of this process. Do you have anything to add to that, Keith?
No, I think that's really, you've hit the, kind of the core of it. And so, yeah, I'll probably speak more in the upcoming slides.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, perfect. So, the pro here is that it's, when you're looking at the numbers, it seems the pro is that it has a huge impact right away. Those are huge numbers that you can cut from your expenses. But the con is that you have to be super careful that you're not then putting it either all on you, or, you don't have the woman power or the man power to keep things moving. And you really may not get people back, because things are going to change here very quickly and people are going to have to take other jobs. So you want to make sure you're thinking through about letting people go. It's really a big decision.
Yeah, it's a great starting point. And so I am going to share with everyone a couple of experiences that I've had. So the very first recession where I was the leader of a business, I was not the CEO, but I was a part of the senior management of a business that we had about 250 people in the team. And so this was in the 2001 to 2003 recession. And so we went through a process of, in the first instance, of cutting 56 people in one morning, one shot. And so I do think that the challenge is that when you start to put names out and you start to say, hey, do I need this person? Do I need this person? Do I need this person? Sometimes we actually start to disconnect what it is that they do and the value that they bring to the organization. And so that's why it's really important to actually think through the pros and cons, not only of reducing payroll, but also of the implications of each person, whether you're talking about, letting go one person or you're letting go 56 people. And so I think that's a really, really important point that I would take into this. So, Jamie, we've had a question come up. And
I was going to ask you the question, Keith. I was all excited. I was ready to jump in with that question too. Look at us go.
Well, I'll let you kick things off then. Awesome.
Okay, so our question is, as a business owner where you have contractors like a developer, technical teams, and they bill hourly, how do you negotiate with such consultants to cut fees? So I'll just talk a little bit about my scenario. So I had we're going to do video work that was going to happen monthly, and had sort of set up this retainer for hours. And so one of my hard calls during this time, because I just loved the woman that was doing this for us, was to call her up and know that she is a human. And so just like all of these contractors are humans. And I was just really honest. And I said, we can't afford you anymore. We know our runway, and I'd really done my homework, so she knew the why, and it had nothing to do with her. But I was like, we can't do this retainer. What else can we do? And so, we worked out a deal that, I could use her for certain hours. We got that price down, and we really worked it that made sense for her, so she didn't lose us entirely. And then for us, that we could afford. So knowing your numbers and then talking to them like humans would be my suggestion. But Keith, why don't you add to that?
Yeah, so I do think that it's a really, really important question. And I do agree with Jamie that just having an honest conversation, I would say most contractors know that that times are tough, right? Like it's it will not come as a surprise. And that is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
The second is that you want to speak with integrity. So to Jamie's point, what you want to do is be honest about what you can and cannot afford. So for example, you actually gave one option in the question, which is, can you do the same amount of work but reduced fee? So that's option in no order, but that's option one. Option two is, I can pay you the same hourly rate, but I need to reduce the number of hours. How do we do that? A third option, especially if you are a technology-based company, is that you can say, will you be willing to work for the same number of hours at a reduced fee and with the ability to earn some equity? And so in other words, paying them in ways other than in cash. And so there's at least three options that you have. And of course, we all know there is a fourth option, which is, can you stop working for the time being, right? In an extreme case. And so my encouragement to you would be, first, of those four options we described, which is cut fees, same hours, same rate, but cut hours, same hours, reduced cash rate plus equity, and fourth is pause, stop the work for now. So what I would recommend is go through the pros and cons of each one of those, think about which one you want to lead with, and then what I would do is I would go to them and say, here's my situation, can't afford in the same way we were thinking before, obviously COVID-19 recession. I can see a couple of options available. Here is the option that I am proposing, and here's why. And then that's actually, now we're talking like as partners and collaborators. And that just speaks to human nature, right? Of treating people with respect and with integrity, and people will help with that. Like, it'll really, really help. So that would be my recommendation. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Great question.
Yeah. Great question. Mm-hmm. Definitely keep the questions coming. And what I will do is I will move to the same. And by the way, you can see there's a couple of options here, though these are more about full-time employees. But Jamie, I'll let you kick things off, and then I can give the Go Java example as well.
Yeah, for sure. So again, just the same, on the same thread, contractors or employees, is just really with integrity. And by doing this homework and getting your numbers in order, it's a lot easier to say to someone, this is the work I've done to know what I can and cannot afford. And so really getting them involved. So it could be telling them, these are the numbers. So maybe there's a way to think through a new revenue stream or product, but it's this idea of all hands on deck. So right, it depends who your core team is, but to bring them in right through this expense cutting process is going to be really beneficial. So yeah, just thinking through, maybe it's a reduced salary, again, similar to Keith's, three options with the contractors. Maybe it is a reduced salary and offering equity, or offering, reduced salary for now with a plan to get that back in place. Sharing jobs, so less, time with less time in the office, or using vacation time. So, people know this is a hard time and it's hard for them too, and they'll want to stay. And so just making it human to human to make this work is going to benefit you hugely in the future of building this business and this team.
Yeah. And so as you're going through this, I do want to give the example of Go Java. So Go Java is a Toronto-based company. And you can see by their logo here that they recycle coffee pods, right? So those little, the coffee makers with the little plastic pods that make individual cups of coffee. Keurig would be one brand that does that. And so Go Java started as a company that gets paid to both deliver and then recycle coffee pods. And so that's their model. Now, in the first 2 weeks of the COVID-19 crisis and the lockdown in Toronto, their revenue went from just over $400,000 a month to just over $40,000 a month. So a 90% reduction in revenue. And so the way that the CEO decided to do this, so this example I'm giving you is 2 weeks old. So what the CEO did is he went to the team and he said, look, we have 2 weeks of cash where I can pay everyone, right? At the end of 2 weeks, I'll have to cut people, but I don't want to. So what can we do as a team to tackle this problem? And the team actually talked more about revenue generation than talking about cost cutting. And so what they did is they came up with a plan where they would actually work with their same business clients to do food delivery for their staff at home. And so the example that I gave you is they went from just over $400,000 a month in revenue down to just over $40,000 a month in revenue. 2 weeks later, they were back up over $300,000 a month in revenue. So they actually gained back 80% of their revenue in 2 weeks. But the reason is because the CEO, the founder, did not try and control the answer. What they did is they actually included the team and said, here's exactly where we are. And so I will tell you that in my experience, my first leadership experience, I was not the CEO. That's the example of cutting 56 people. That CEO tried to hold everything, and it really didn't work well. And so in the 2 subsequent recessions that I was actually the CEO, I included the team always, and I'm including the spring team now. And in this particular recession, and the reason is because 12 heads are smarter than one, 3 heads are smarter than one, 100 heads are smarter than one. And so the important part is, first, you're going to get to a better answer. Second, as a founder, you actually get to find out who's actually really committed, right? Because some people will jump off the ship, right? They'll be like, oh, this is too much for me. And so, but it's actually really important for us as founders to know that now. And so those would be my comments. So I don't know if you want anything to add anything, or I can move on.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think the biggest thing there, though, is we saw with Go Java is it's the why. What were they there to do? Which is to make the workplace better for the employees. So that idea of going to your why and thinking through ways to create more revenue is a really good way, and holding tight to your plan is going to be hard right now. So I think that's a great example.
Yeah, I have another example just as an aside before I move on. There's a company in Vancouver, a software company focused on emergency response in disasters, and it's a business-to-business software company, and they faced a crisis, and they had 6 weeks of cash left. So when they did this cash calculation that Jamie was describing, it was 6 weeks. Just so you know, before they made the calculation, they thought they had 6 months. When they actually went through the math, it was 6 weeks. So that's why we do the math, right? Mm-hmm. So they did the math and they're like, wow, not as much time as we thought. So then they went to the team and they said, what can we do? In their particular case, the team agreed to some salary cuts with some substitute for equity. And then they actually came up with a revenue generation strategy. And just to give you guys some context, they doubled their revenue in 30 days. So it's a really, good second example. And you guys heard Jamie's example earlier, like when you get the team involved and you're not just talking about salary cuts, but you talk about like new sources of revenue, new products, new customers, you would be amazed at what a team can do, especially when they know that the company is on the line, mm-hmm. right? So it's a really, really cool opportunity.
And that's the power of the Runway. It gives you now a timeline, and it gives you all hands on deck. That's why it's so important to start with that number and then go outwards and look at the team and those sort of types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Great. Maybe I'll kick things off here. I have had the tough reality of having to let people go. And to be honest, over the course of my career, I probably have let more than 100 people go over 20 years. And so what I would say is that it's never easy. And it actually, to be honest, over the course of time, it only gets harder. It takes a personal toll on us as founders to let people go. But while that is true, if you make the decision to let someone go, you don't waste time. Be direct, be immediate about it. Make sure that you offer help, whether that is introductions to other people who might be hiring, giving them references. So if I go back to our earlier question about contractors, if the answer to the contractor is pause the relationship, please do consider, like, I have to pause for now, but can I make introductions to other people and can I make referrals? So I think that that's a really important note to take. So Jamie, I'll pass it over to you and see if you want to add to that.
No, that is, I think you said it well. So I did have to let someone go in my business, and there's only 3 of us. So 1 out of a team of 3 is very personal. And it was, it was just a really hard thing to do. But because it was based on numbers, it was actually this amazing conversation of this person understanding and us talking through what had happened. And then we got to sit there and say, what do you want to do next? What introductions can I do? How can I help you? And then the fun part of that is only a few months later, she now works at Spring. So in some ways, when you're letting someone go, you can help them move on to the next phase of their life, which is really, really exciting. So, but again, just thinking about it in a way, how can you help them, right?
Yeah. So I do think that I do want to touch on something, Jamie, that you just shared, which is that when you need to let someone go, the sooner you do it, the more that they have an opportunity to create a better future for themselves.
Yeah.
And so it is really important to remember, it does, my experience is it works out for the best. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give you guys a very personal example. So you remember I said that one day we had to let go 56 people. And so one of the people that we had to let go was our director of quality assurance. And so we called him into the room and we told him that we were having to let him go because it was a recession and we were downsizing. And he actually started to cry, not in a dramatic way, but just a few tears. And he was smiling. And it was very hard. But second of all, we said, obviously we asked if he's okay. And so this is actually what he said. He said, 5 days ago, my wife was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. And I have been wrestling for 5 days about what I am supposed to do in work and in life when she is in this situation. And you have now helped me to know the answer to that question. And so Sandy, who is the gentleman who is that person, he then spent the next 6 months at home with his wife. And he and I have actually maintained contact for the last, it's actually been 19 years. We have maintained contact for 19 years. I consider him a friend. And so, but it really was an opportunity for him to do the right thing and for things to work out for the best. Mm-hmm. So even in the worst possible times, I think it's really important. So I just wanted to give that very real example.
Yeah.
So a question has come up, thanks, Jerry, where he said, hey, what about smaller teams of, let's say, up to 5 people or even solo entrepreneurs? So it's actually 2 separate topics: teams of more than 1 but less than 5, and then solo entrepreneurs. And the context here is decision making on pivoting. So if you have more than 1 person, so if you're 2 to 5 people, Yes, absolutely. You include everybody on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasons: first, 5 heads are better than 1. 2 heads are better than 1. Second, you need to know who is going to be loyal through the tough times.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important to do that.
And with that, by bringing them in, you're showing them respect, because then they can choose whether they want to go down this path with you.
Exactly.
Because with a small team, you're on a path now. If your runway is short, like where I was at, I needed to give my co-founder the opportunity to say, no, I cannot do this with you. And so luckily, I'm so fortunate that she was able to say, yes, we're going to do this. But I just wanted to add that in, is that you're binding your people together, and you're also letting people choose a different path if that's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
I interrupted you. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's great. Now, on solo entrepreneurs, team of 1, this is where it's really critical to have what we call a hive mind, right? And a hive mind is basically a group of peers or mentors or both who you can actually sit down with and talk through your plan and your pivots. Fellow entrepreneurs are kind of the number one source if you have a mentor or advisor. And then obviously, Jerry, in the case of your situation, which is an incubator accelerator, sitting down with your incubator accelerator is a fantastic place for you to go for help. So, but my encouragement is if you know someone who is a solo entrepreneur, make sure they are talking to people about their plan, because one person getting it right in a critical time is very, very hard. And so what we want to do is be able to share. So we just need to share with confidence. In effect, there's a term that we use. It's called mastermind or hive mind, right? It's this like group of people. My personal recommendation in this particular crisis context is I like a smaller group, say 4 to 6 people. I do think it could go up to 10 if people were really trusting and they knew each other well. But if someone's putting together a group for the first time or speaking to people individually, I would say 4 to 6 max. And the reason is because if you're only talking to 2 people, you might not have enough diversity of opinion. But if you're talking to more than 6 people, sometimes it starts to become noise and it's hard to filter the quality feedback. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation. So for solopreneurs, create a list of the people they trust who are peers, who have been entrepreneurs, who are entrepreneurs. Include people like Incubator, Accelerator, Innovation Hubs, etc. And then what I would do is ask them if they're willing to give feedback on a plan. Tell them how much time you're expecting of them. Make sure that the ask is very clear. Be respectful of people's time during a crisis. That would be the approach I would take. So Jamie, over to you.
To keep in mind that right now is a time where you need to share all your numbers, and I don't think this is a time where you can say, we're thinking of going down this pivot, down this road for no reason. It has to be, here's what the data is telling me. This is where I'm headed. So it needs to be a group of people or a few people that you feel that you can talk frankly and show them these numbers and that sort of thing. So just really keeping that in mind. This is not a time to just give ideas. It has to come from the data.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Yeah. Perfect. Cool. Great question.
Great. Yeah. Great question. Keep the questions coming. So we've just gone through and we've kind of covered off a couple of key areas. I'm just going to revisit for a minute. And in particular, we were talking about, kind of, you have your runway, we're asking for help, and then the payroll piece, right? So it's the biggest cost, sometimes biggest impact on expenses. There are definitely pros and cons. We want to actually write out on a sheet of paper for employees and contractors the pros and cons of keeping each person and what they're great at. Remember to get the team involved, right? And then if you do need to cut, then to do that. Let's just pause here and see if there are any additional questions or comments. And then what we can do is we'll just wait a moment or two, see if there's any questions that pop up, and then what we'll do is we'll continue on to the next topic. This session tends to feel heavy because of the topic, right?
Yeah.
Cutting costs.
It is heavy.
Shrinking, right?
Yeah. But it's the amazing part of this process is that heaviness, I felt the shock of the lightness you get knowing the reality. There's heaviness in not knowing your numbers and thinking. I was sort of haunted by how much time do we have? And then once we knew, it became entrepreneurial. It became a game. It became this creative exercise of, okay, so this is our runway. What does that mean for us? And then you can make plans, which I think as most entrepreneurs, we love a good plan. So yeah, I just hope you fight through it to get to the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. A question has come up. As an employee or contractor, how do we engage with employers when cuts are coming through? How do we negotiate a fair cut, especially when we are not involved in the key decision making? And so that is an absolutely amazing question. So critical. And I am going to give the dual perspective of my experience, both as an employee as well as an employer, and we'll use this as a point of discussion. And Jamie definitely will have experienced this as well. So first, there obviously is this sense of how involved are the leaders of the business in how involved are they allowing people to become a part of the process? And the two comments that I would make from my experience is that, one, as an employee, the first thing I would always do is I would always say to my employer, how can I help? Right? We're in a crisis, right? COVID-19, we're in a recession. How can I help? Because you can cut my salary, fine, but there's other ways that I can help too, right? Like I can help brainstorm ideas on revenue. I can also brainstorm ideas on other cost cutting. I can help you to deliver a key proposal, like whatever it is, how can I help? And my first recommendation to you is actually start there. And the reason is because it is your job and it is your company, like as an employee. And so it really shows that you care. So I think that's point number one. And that really will resonate with your employer. The second thing that I would say is that you also have an opportunity to, I think you have an opportunity to think a little bit about your box. And what I mean by your box is you're a person and you have expenses, personal expenses on a monthly basis, right? So you have to pay for rent, or you have to pay for your house. You might have a family, you have to pay for groceries, right? Like, so there's a set of expenses you have. So my encouragement to you as an employee is know your own runway, right? Like know your own expenses. And then the important part is that if your employer comes to you and says, cuts are coming, and here's what you're saying I need to take as a salary cut, you may not be able to afford that salary cut. And so you need to be honest with your employer. And so what you can do with your employer is say, and this was an example of the company that I was talking about before with the emergency response software, where the team as a whole agreed to a % of salary cut. But one of the employees, actually, to be honest, it was two of the employees came to the CEO and said, actually, we can't afford that salary cut. But here's what we can do instead. And what they came back with was some revenue generation ideas. And they said, give us 30 days on our salary, existing salary, so we can try these revenue ideas. And they said, if we can't make them work, then you can cut our salaries. right? And that was actually agreed to. So I think a couple of recommendations. One is that offer help. If you care, offer it, right? Because sometimes you will find that there's ways for you to add value once you do offer help. Offer help in finding new ways to cut costs, offer help in new way to find revenue, find ways that you can help beyond the normal. The second one is know your own runway. And if the cut is too deep, then come to them with suggestions about how you can help without that pay cut. So I think those are really the critical ways to do it. And then Jamie, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I was just nodding furiously beside you, so I was your hype girl. I just think everyone should think of themselves as an entrepreneur, whether you own a business or you are an employee or a contractor. You should, everything we've talked about in these webinars, as in crisis mode, but also just in life, knowing your numbers as a human is so important for your own decision making, because you then put a lot of power in your hands to know what you can, put your hand up for and say, I'll do, or what you need to make changes. So yeah, I would just, to be honest, make myself super invaluable to an employer and know that we're all humans dealing with this. So how can you help? Because now you've heard the perspective of what a business person is going through right now. And as the employee, how do you help them? So yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. And then I'm going to make a personal, like a personal sharing and observation. This was something that I personally did. So I'm not recommending it for others, but I am going to share with you what I did. In 2001, as I said, I was a leader. I was a vice president of this company, but I was not the CEO. And so I was an employee, even though I was a senior employee. And so this notion of like, how do I help? What can I afford? What can I not afford? Like, so that was the process that I went through. But there is one of the things that I did not share as a recommendation. I will share it as an observation. And that is, I believed in the business. So what I did is I actually talked to my wife and I said, I'm going to work extra hard for the next 60 to 90 days to do all that I can to help this business. And so I worked very hard and very long hours, but there was always a hard time limit, 90 days. 90 days to try and make a personal impact on the business. And so I worked long hours and I worked some weekends. Well, I worked a lot of weekends. And what I will tell you is two things. One is it actually did not impact the outcome of the success of the business. The business was going to succeed or fail regardless. But what I will tell you is, number two, is I really helped the business to get more clarity. And after that employment situation, literally for 2 years afterwards, all I had to do was pick up the phone to people in Vancouver and say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And they would answer my call, because it basically cemented my reputation in town as someone who would help. And so as an employee, to be honest, this is your time to shine, because now you can actually show people that you are invaluable at any time. So I'm not, please hear this, I am not recommending working 7 days a week. What I am recommending is what I put in chat, right? Offer help, know your own expenses in Runway, and make alternative suggestions. But and this is my fourth recommendation, think about how you can make yourself invaluable in a way that not only your company will see it, but people in the community will see it. Because really it is an opportunity for you to shine and show yourself to be exceptional. So I do want to highlight that. Cool. Yeah. Now we have a question, second question that's come up, which is a really, really great question. Is it advisable to cut salaries for older staff and recruit more people to the firm? And so I am going to make a couple of comments. Because this is probably one of the toughest questions I think we could get asked, Jamie. I don't know if you would agree or disagree, but
I want to hear what you have to say, because I have a gut reaction, but I don't I want to hear yours first.
Hey, listen, look at my head. You're hurting me with this question. I'm just kidding. So the important part of this conversation from my perspective is, if you remember, if you were part of our first session, we talked about rebooting our plan, right? So what is our current situation? What is going to be our new plan to survive and to thrive? In how do we survive COVID-19? How do we survive the recession? And how do we thrive out the other end? And so our new plan requires a set of skills and experience in order to execute that plan to maximum success. That's actually where you go. So we don't actually worry about the person's salary, like the amount of salary relative, like high salary, low salary. We also don't care about their age, and we also don't care about their education level. What we actually care about is, I have created a plan. I have rebuilt my plan for the future, and I need a set of skills and experience to do that. And so I will keep the team that allows me to succeed at that. Young and old, educated, non-educated, rich, poor, doesn't matter, right? But that's the key. So don't think about staff cuts as an age thing or a salary thing or an education thing. Think about team cuts and team retention as who is critical to help me execute my go forward plan. That's the important question to ask. So I'm going to pause there, and Jamie, chime in.
Yeah. Well, right away, just new people into your business will not save your business right now. It will drain you dry in so many ways, money-wise and energy-wise. So what is required now is leadership. And so it's bringing the team you have and creating this new plan. As you go along the road of the new plan, you might see, as Keith is saying, there are people that are needed to fill in parts of this plan. And then it might be going to your staff to say, we need this person. Are you willing to take a cut so we can bring them on, or whatever that looks like? But I think there's a feeling right now, or not in these situations, where if we had this type of person, everything would be different. If we had this would be different. No, you have what's in front of you, you have the numbers, and actually it's leadership right now, and taking your team with you to get on this new path. So I'm pretty passionate around not adding. No one will save you in this. No new person, no shiny new subscription. It is leadership and core values of your business.
Yeah. So, I think the important part is you can answer this question about which salaries you cut, or which people you cut, which people you retain based on that new plan, right? And so I think that's really critical. On a personal note, and so what I've been reflecting on while Jamie was sharing is, I've been reflecting on my own past experience of people who I've kept and people who I've let go in a recession. And what I would say is, I don't, at least off the top of my head, I do not see a discernible pattern around age, education level, salaries. It really always is about the plan. Mm-hmm. And making sure that you can actually work the plan with the team that you keep.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. We are heading into the final stages. And one thing that I am going to encourage all of you on this call, and for anybody who's watching this recording, is that once you have gone through the cutting process that we have described in this presentation, you should be able to see in your prediction and your forecast of cash that you can get to at least the end of January 2021. And my encouragement is, if you can't see that, what I would recommend is continue to come to the webinars. Also reach out to myself or Jamie in LinkedIn, And then the other one is, if you are connected to either an innovation hub or an incubator accelerator, share the numbers, because you want to know, and this is my recommendation to you, you want to know by the end of April, 9 days from now, you want to know you can get to the end of January. So ask for help if you can't get there yourself in doing these numbers. Any comments, Jamie, on that before I move on?
No, but it's just do this quickly. This quickly. You can do it. Sit down, take a day.
Great.
Yeah.
And so I think we've done a good job of talking about this, being creative, and being creative again includes sharing people in the process.
Yeah. I think that just speaks that last slide about, not bringing in new people right now. This is not a time to overextend yourself financially. It's the opposite. It's to go inward and go lean and look at leadership.
Yeah. So I'll let you jump in on this just final piece around these different elements.
Yeah, so basically you now know where you stand. So now to make this new plan of how you move forward is to really look at the other pieces of your business. So we made this sort of in a low-hanging fruit idea. So you want to go to what is the easiest cash up front. So what accounts receivables, where are you owed money? So making a plan to get that in. Looking at your sales funnel. So you really want to look through what is going to happen here. What is actually still in the funnel, because remember, everyone's experiencing this. It is a special time. When I was going through this, my business was, but it didn't mean my clients were. Whereas now we're at this time where you're going through this, your vendors are going through this, your clients are going through this. So it's quite a new landscape. So then when you look at your assets, what you have in the business already and where you could leverage those, and then at your offerings. So I think the next slides we go through each one. Hey, Keith?
Yeah, and so I think what we'll do is, this is good takeaway material. And so I think as the follow-up to this, because these are things that we can't really dig into in detail in this particular session. And so what I'm thinking is that what we'll do is we can provide this presentation as follow-up material where you can actually go through accounts receivable, sales assessment, what you're offering. So in other words, your product and services, as well as your assets, so that you can see if there's anything else that you can cut. Mm-hmm. And so just so you know, we also have a few resources that we're starting to add in here. We'll share those in, including bench accounting on financial statements, BDC, which is the Business Development Bank of Canada, on reducing costs. So we'll put these different line items in. And then I think what we'll do is we'll actually go to just general questions for the last few minutes that we're here. For everybody, as a reminder, the next sessions that we're going to be running. So next week, we're going to be digging into rebooting your plan. So actually rebuilding that plan of yours now that we've gone through emergency response. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then dig into sales, specifically marketing, community, and we'll have a few sort of extra spring team members and guest speakers in on these things, which is going to be great. Raising money in a recession is always an important one, and then investing in uncertain times. And I'm actually going to pause here. Again, thanking EU for innovation for our time, but let's see if there's more questions. We still have 5 minutes left. And so if there's any last minute questions or comments that you guys have, either about this topic or about the crisis in general, we'd love to be able to answer those now. Yeah, so feel free to chime in, comment, question, and then we can move towards wrapping this session.
Yeah, and I think just to add, to wrap up with the runway and that sort of thing, is what that is doing is, because next week we're talking about rebooting your plan. So what that's doing is laying the foundation, because now you have your timeline, you know the things that you've cut. So you've sort of created a new foundation for you to rebuild on. So that's sort of why we see the importance. And so then when we're looking at, in the ends of these slides, your assets and those sort of thing, we have another list of resources that we have to rebuild. So that's sort of, we're laying out what we have in front of us. We've let go of some things so that we can really start to move forward. And knowing you have your team involved is now where that plan, you've bought them in at the beginning. They're with you now, and now you can move forward on the plan.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Well said. One thing that I would also encourage is that if you have a burning question or a topic that you think would be worth us doing as a webinar, please do suggest it as well. You can put it into the comments here, or you can also make the suggestion to the EU for Innovation team coming out of this session. So definitely open to any ideas that we have, that just to make sure that you guys are getting the support that you need. And so I think it's just a really great opportunity for us to do that. So again, we're just going to pause here for a moment and just see if there's any last minute questions that you guys have. Should be great.
Great questions throughout the webinar. They added a lot to the content. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
And again, I think from my perspective, just as we're moving to close here, the EU for Innovation team has done such a great job of helping to organize these sessions, and it's really about working together. And Erikens, thanks for popping your email in. So if you guys have any suggestions, do contact Erikens. It would be great to hear your questions and ideas for next session. Remember, the EU for Innovation team knows all the critical ecosystem players in Albania, right? So they know Destil, and they know Coolab, and they know Jerry and your team with your incubator accelerator. So they know all the key players in the ecosystem. And so remember, it takes a village to raise a business. It also takes a village to save a business. And so let's make sure that we're working together in this. Connect with Jamie and I in LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. Connect with Erikens in LinkedIn. And we're really excited for the next session. So as a follow-up to this, you guys will get an email where you will have a link to the recording. We'll share these extra slides that we were talking about today. And then we'll also make sure that you have the schedule of the upcoming sessions so that you have, you have them in your calendar, you have them LinkedIn. And if you have any questions in the meantime, just ping Jamie or I in LinkedIn, and we'd love to help. So really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you very much for being a part of this, and look forward to the next one.
Yeah, have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Okay, thanks everybody. We'll talk soon.